Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hey everybody, welcome. Hopefully everybody's doing well. So today I'm talking about change, what it feels like. This was something that was coming up a lot a couple weeks ago with clients. It happens very often actually over the years that I work with my clients every other week, basically. So there's kind of a separation. I'm not working with clients all month long. So it's interesting because I often pick up on a pattern of what I'm discussing with clients during the week that I'm working with them. And oftentimes it's a different version of the same principle. So, it looks different for everyone. I mean, because their journeys are different. But it's really interesting that a lot of what people are working on specifically at a particular time, sometimes in a 2-week period, that there's similarities. So I always find that very interesting. So the similarities that I saw, like I said, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, was we ended up talking about what change looked like. So, my clients, of course, are going through change. So, oftentimes it feels very weird, which I'm kind of laughing because my job is to try to explain things. And sometimes it's hard. And when you start a topic by saying, well, it's just weird, sometimes weird is hard to describe, right? That's why we use the word weird to describe it. It's just kind of weird. But weird is what it feels like. So what I mean by weird is out of the ordinary, not the norm. A little discombobulating, right? So when we're feeling that, and I think it's especially rampant in the culture we're in right now, societally, because there's this big thing about feelings, and which it's like most things, it's good and bad, right? We have to pay attention to our feelings. We can't stuff our feelings. We need to honor them. We need to feel them. We need to be aware of them. We need to take them into consideration. And for tens of thousands of years, people weren't really doing that. And now this is, my opinion here. And then the spiritual shift started happening probably around 1960, and people started becoming more sensitive, their feelings would get hurt more, so, and I think that that's part of the spiritual shift going on, but there's a big transition to that. So, and to this day, we're still stuffing our feelings too much. I believe that to be true. But by the same token, if we're not stuffing our feelings, it seems like the masses have fallen into this trap of staying in their feelings, that their feelings mean everything. Their feelings are supposed to run their life. They're supposed to determine everything. That's all that matters. And that's just not true. It's, we're always seeking balance. So becoming aware of your feelings and understanding them and interacting with them in a healthy way is extremely important. But it's not the only thing there is, you know? Like, so I think we run around going, well, this just doesn't feel right. And it's like, well, why? Well, because it doesn't. And it's like, well, like, relax. We're just trying to explore the feelings. We're trying to see if the feelings are rational, trying to talk them out. And people are very defensive. They have a right to be angry. I have a right to be angry. Yeah, you have the right to be angry. You have the right to be sad. You have the right to be happy. You have the right to be whatever you want. But why do you defend the right to be angry so much? Right? When anger comes up, that's not a life sentence. It's just anger comes up to grab our attention and say, hey, there's something that seems out of whack here, and it upset you, to capture your attention so you take it seriously and look at it and figure out what to do with it. It's not that we're supposed to be angry about that thing forever and carrying that anger around with us forever. Like we're supposed to work through it. We're supposed to figure out what to do with it. We're not supposed to carry it, right? So the reason I kind of just touched on that for a few minutes was because I think it plays a part. We honor our feelings too much. We're about to, so when you're going through change and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. It's like, well, it's not supposed to feel right. Like when you're creating a new way of being, it's not supposed to feel normal, which very often is what determines what feels right and what feels wrong to us. It's what we are conditioned to be. It's basically what caused all our problems, like, so I think my story is a good example of this. When I was getting sober, and I've said this many times, my sponsor said, did you destroy all areas of your life? I said, yes. Did you say, okay, any that you missed? No. Okay. Did you try to destroy your life, or did you try to do good? I said, oh, I tried to do good. He goes, okay. So if you tried to do good and yet you destroyed every area of your life, would it be fair to say that your best thinking sucks? And I went, yes, I think that's fair to say. Okay. And what that created was a blank slate. I didn't trust my thinking anymore. I didn't trust my feelings. I didn't trust what seemed right to me. And it wasn't just that 5-minute conversation that we had. It was more than that, because I was skeptical. Just letting go of the way that you look at things is harder than we realize. We've spent a lifetime creating the way that we look at life, right? Every experience, every piece of data, every information, everything we've learned all compacts into the way we look at life, our particular perception, how we interact with reality. We've been cultivating this our entire life. And now all of a sudden somebody comes to me and says, that's wrong. And I'm like, huh? Like I'm an intelligent guy. I have good reasons for the way that I think and look at things and all this stuff. But I couldn't argue with him because he had some evidence. My life was all messed up. So it opened my mind enough to where I decided to play the game of okay, let's try this. So he would tell me to do something, and he wasn't real interested in what my opinion was. Because every time I gave it to him, he would say something like, well, yeah, but your life's all messed up and mine's not. So why would I want to listen to you? I'd be like, damn it, that's a good point. So what I would do is I would say, like he said at the beginning, he says, give me 3 months. Give me 3 months of listening to me, doing what I say, and then if it doesn't work, I'll gladly refund your misery. I was like, good point. I'm miserable now. I don't really have anything to risk. So I might as well try it for a few months and see if it works. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be in the same spot. No harm, no foul. If it does, big surprise, yippee-ki-yay. So I kind of went out there a little bit to prove him wrong, at least some of the time, definitely to prove him wrong. There was certain things that he told me to do that I was like, this is 100% wrong. I have a laundry list of reasons why that are very intellectual, very clear, very logical, and I know he's wrong, but he won't listen to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what he says, because who gives a crap? I mean, I'm used to doing stupid things. So I'm going to go do what he says, even though it's stupid. And then when it blows up, I'm going to shove it in his face and go, see, I knew this was wrong because of this, this, and this. You know, I was skeptical. So, which I think skepticism is healthy. So I went out there and I would do what he told me to do, and it would work. And my mind would be blown, because I'm like, I had a whole laundry list, and this just broke all those rules because it worked out favorably for me. And that's when I really became a blank slate. That after that happened several times, I was like, oh my God, oh, okay. I don't know what I'm doing, which what I just described is basically a broken down version or explanation of what Einstein says, that you can't fix a problem with the consciousness that created it. We are creating our own reality. And that's a hard concept for people to grasp, especially when their life is all messed up. It's much easier, and we're socially conditioned to point the finger outward and blame life and blame circumstances and blame other people. And it doesn't feel real good when we blame ourselves. So we try not to do it, right? And this is what we need to do, is we need to understand that we have created the circumstances in our life. You know, like my sister and me grew up in the same family. Now, are we different people? Yes, we are, but we grew up in the same household with the same love, the same parents, and she came out completely different than I came out. You know, we thought very differently. So and we lived very different lives. Why? Well, the way we learned to interact with life was differently. So it's not like life didn't come into our family and attack our family and destroy us, which it seemed like it only attacked me and destroyed me, where the other people in my family were okay. So why would life have picked me to just destroy? Well, it didn't. You know, we kind of want to believe that it did, but it didn't. It didn't pick me to destroy. What it did was I just created, for many reasons, I created a way of interacting with life that was dysfunctional. Of course, I didn't see it as dysfunctional. If I saw it as dysfunctional, I wouldn't have been doing it. But it was. So when I'm letting go of that, even though it was very obvious that my way wasn't working, and I could grasp that and want to change and open up, when I went to go do things that were different. Oh, did I finish that Einstein quote? Or did I go off on something else? That Einstein quote is, you can't fix a problem with the consciousness that created it. Right? I think maybe I did say it. Anyway. So our consciousness, the way we're interacting with life, the way we look at things, the way we process information and come to conclusions, that creates our reality. So that created, if your life is in a way that you don't like it, that's what did that. Now, I'm not saying technically it's your fault. Like it's just, nobody teaches us how to interact with life. That's what I do now. I try to teach people how to interact with life so they have better outcomes. So, you know, when I start changing the way that I'm interacting with life and implementing new strategies and new ways of thinking and new ways of processing information and coming to conclusions, that feels very disconcerting. It feels weird. It feels like it's probably wrong, to be honest with you. I mean, if it just doesn't feel right. Why? Because it's kind of like it's kind of like hurting your hand, like I tore a tendon in my finger, and it's almost all the way healed now. I can almost close it all the way. But since it's on my right hand and I'm right-handed, I needed to do things left-handed. Some of the things, right? Especially in the beginning when it was hurt. So if I want to use my left hand to do something that I was normally using my right hand to do, it felt awkward. It felt weird. It didn't, like, there was almost like, if I were to explain what kind of feelings were going through me or thoughts might go through me in a moment of unconsciousness, when I'm not really thinking clearly, when I'm just kind of going by how I feel, I would be like, go to try to do something with my right hand and say, oh, I can't, I need to use my left hand. Then I would go to do it with my left hand and the coordination wasn't there. So there would be a little part of my brain that goes, Glenn, you're not supposed to be doing this with your left hand. You're supposed to be using your right hand. Right now, of course, that doesn't make sense, because the whole point that I'm using my left hand is because I can't use my right hand. So it's not actually logical. It's just, it was my brain with the preconceived notions. I had been using my right hand for this thing for 56 years. So even though intellectually I knew that I should be doing it differently, there was this part of my brain that would pop up and go, hey, you're doing this wrong. I'd be like, no, quiet. No, I'm not. I have to use my left hand. That's kind of what it's like when you're going through change. When you're going through change, the way you need to think is different than your old way of thinking. That's what change is. That's what a spiritual awakening is. It's just a change of perspective, a change of perception, a way of looking at something differently. So then you go to apply it or implement it in an area, and it just feels weird. It feels different. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like the way that you've always done it. Well, of course not. It's not the way that you've always done it. So of course it doesn't feel like the way you've always done it. It feels abnormal. Right. And a lot of times people freeze when they experience that, because we're so conditioned to listen to our feelings instead of dissecting them. This is why I was trying to explain the feelings at the beginning of the podcast. It's like our feelings are wonderful things and they serve purposes, but we can't just blindly pay attention to them and let them guide us, because that's not our intuition. Our feelings are not our intuition. And most people consider that. It's like, because everybody goes, oh, follow your heart. Yeah, well, follow your heart, follow your intuition, follow divine guidance, follow your inner voice. Absolutely. I believe in all of that. But follow your feelings does not mean the same as that. That's different. Follow your feelings means follow your emotions. And that's horrible advice. Your emotions, you can't think clearly when you're wrapped up in emotion. It clouds your judgment, it clouds your vision, it shuts your brain down, starts forcing you into fight or flight. Like, you making decisions and figuring out what to do through your feelings is horrible. A horrible plan. Like I said, we can honor them in other ways. They're there for a purpose, and we can use them for that purpose, but we're talking about something that they're not supposed to be used for. So when you're going through change and the things that you're thinking just kind of seem, wow, I don't know, man, could this be right? It kind of, like, it made sense when Glenn said it, but now, like, I'm second guessing it. I don't know if I should interact with life this way. That's normal. That's you breaking out of a conditioned pattern that you've conditioned yourself to be in for life. It's kind of important to trust your life coach because they're going to be exposing new ways of thinking. Now, I'm not saying just to do absolutely everything that myself or some other life coach or advisor tells you to do. I mean, every once in a while, there are things that, like, there are reasons to not do things that, like, I'll just use myself as an example. Over the years, there pops up instances where my clients don't do what we discussed or what I've recommended or what we've come to a conclusion on, or however you want to phrase it. And then it comes time to do it and they don't do it. And sometimes they just need to suffer more, quite honestly. I'm not being facetious. They actually do. They actually need to suffer more. They have to go do the wrong thing, make a mistake just to really hammer home that they can't trust their thinking, and then they're ready for change. So sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's that they need to learn that they're at a crux in their journey where they need to start really trusting themselves a little bit more instead of depending on me so much. And they need to learn to stand up against me and say, no, Glenn, I'm not going to do this. It doesn't seem right. Some people need that as part of their journey. This is why I never get upset if somebody doesn't do something that I recommended or that we discussed. If they don't do it, I don't get upset at all. It's because it's not ego based. I'm not going to feel good if they do everything I say. That's not my goal. That's not what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm not let down if they don't. Right. And I'm always looking for the lessons and the growth, and I have to meet people where they are at that time. It doesn't matter how they got there or what. So if somebody doesn't do something that I suggested, and then they're suffering, I'm not like, well, what the heck, man? Like, if you just did what I said, I'm not like that at all. I'm like, okay, it's okay. You felt you needed to do this, so you did it. All right, well, now here we are. Let's figure out the best way to handle the situation now that it's a little worse. And we'll start from here and move forward towards the solution. That's fine. And then sometimes I even tell them, I'm like, yeah, I think you needed to stand up, because sometimes people have a hard time speaking their truth. And if they can do it with me, it's kind of a safe space, because if somebody stands up to me and speaks their truth to me, and then I'm like, okay, well, it's your decision. That's fine. And I still respect them after, and I don't start arguing with them and stuff like that. Well, then now they just spoke their truth and they got positive feedback for speaking their truth. So now they can stand in it a little bit. They're a little bit more confident in it. So sometimes that's the situation. Yeah. I've even been in situations where like I was, we talked about something and I just go with what's guided. See, I don't second guess it. So I guess every once in a blue moon, sometimes the way we discussed something, like usually if people don't do what we've discussed, usually it turns out poorly. It just does. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It just usually turns out poorly. Otherwise, if I was giving people crappy advice on a regular basis, I think that I would probably be a crappy life coach. I don't think I am. But I am honest. And every once in a while, we will discuss something and I'm guided to steer these people in a particular direction. And then they choose to break away from it and do something else. And it works out even better. That does happen. It's rare, but every once in a blue moon that happens. And I think it's just, and I go with the information that's coming through me at that time. And I know if at least a few a few times over the years, the information I was getting, it was kind of a version of what I just said. They needed to learn to stand up against other people, namely me in that situation, and follow their intuition, not their feelings. I think I said feelings a few minutes ago. They needed to learn to follow their intuition and trust themselves. And that's why I was kind of guided to give them, for lack of a better explanation, kind of poor advice. And they broke away from it. Now, like I said, that happens very, very, very rarely. It's only happened a few times in over a decade. So it's very, very rare. But my point is that it does happen. Sometimes, that sometimes people have to stand up for themselves and stand in their intuition. It's just, there's a little piece of me that almost regrets saying that, but I'm honest and I'm authentic. So I'm just, that's fine. I'm not going to edit the video or something. So the reason that I get a little, the flash I got is like, oftentimes when you say that to people, they use that, they weaponize it. Now all of a sudden I can have a client that heard me say that, or my current clients probably wouldn't do it because they've worked with me for a while and they trust me, they understand. But it's possible a new client could listen to this podcast, come in and be like, okay, I'm going to push back on everything Glenn says because he doesn't know everything and I need to stand my ground. It's like, well, that's not what I was saying. I was saying very rarely it happens. I mean, the reason people go to a life coach is to hear a different perspective. If your perspective was working, then you wouldn't be going to a life coach. That's the dynamic. So why pay me money if you're just going to do whatever the hell you want to do anyway? It's a waste of your money. So, I'm kind of trying to explain all around this because it's a very specific topic. And I can't sit there for an hour talking about what weird feels like. But so it's kind of like the way that I've described it is it's kind of like Bizarro World. There was a Seinfeld episode, and that's what it always reminds me of. It's like common sense becomes uncommon sense, and uncommon sense becomes common sense, and you can't trust your thinking, and it's like everything's new, and it doesn't feel right, and it just feels off. And it's that, like, that's okay. That's part of change. It's supposed to feel like that. Another example of this was maybe an extreme example. Change does feel like this sometimes. Sometimes change feels extremely excruciating. There are aspects of it that do. But, one of my favorite stories is my friend Brian Reed told me about this radio show where this guy said had the scientist on because they put a camera inside of a cocoon of a butterfly, a caterpillar changing into a butterfly, and it's a radio show, so there's no video. So the host was like, yeah, so what's that look like? And the scientist was kind of dry, and he was like, well, did you ever see that movie Aliens? He says, yes, I have. He says, well, it's kind of like that. And the host is like, okay, like, where do we go from here? Like, people are listening. I got to fill the air here, And so he's like, all right, well, thanks for coming on the show. And he's like, well, wait a minute. Do you want to hear the audio? And he says, what do you mean the audio? He says, well, we're able to put a little microphone in there too. And we have the audio of the caterpillar changing into the butterfly. He's like, oh, well, yes, please play that for us. So he plays the video, and it's like, the audio, and it's kind of like, and he stops, and the host is like, what was that? And the scientist says, that's what change sounds like. That's the sound of transformation. And I was like, ooh, wow, what a good story. That's Change isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's not comfortable. The most comfortable thing to do is just to stay in a pattern that's conditioned. That's literally why we stay in conditioned patterns. It's because it's just comfortable. It's just, even though they're not good for us, even though they're not working, we just stay in them. So there must be a reason that we keep doing things that don't work, right? Well, why is that? Well, because it feels comfortable. That's why. It feels comfortable. It's not working. But out there is the unknown. That's scary. That's freaky. I don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of like the mentality that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. It's like, I'm not happy and I don't like the way my life is going, but at least I know what to expect. And I'll just stay here. Like many, 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 many people live their entire lives like that. The majority of people, which, hopefully we're changing. But that's why. It's because it feels normal. It feels comfortable. And then when we go to do something outside of that, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's disconcerting and it feels weird. So people go, oh, no, I don't. I'm just going to stay over here. I'm just going to keep doing what I used to do. It's like, yeah, but you don't like what you're getting, But they just stay in it. So this is why it feels weird. It's because doing what you've been conditioned to do, or what you've conditioned yourself to do, or what you've experienced over and over, it just feels normal. This is also why this is why people repeat patterns, like I just said. But another example of a pattern is relationship patterns. Like most people marry a version of one of their parents. They can draw lines to how their spouse is similar to one of their parents in very foundational principle ways. So why? Well, it's because everything has a vibration, everything has a frequency, everything is energy. So like if you're in a household that has an alcoholic parent, the chances of you marrying somebody that's an alcoholic is higher. And even if you hated that, that's what's ironic. This is how unconscious we are. And like, people can grow up in an alcoholic home and swear that they're never going to be around that ever again. And then they end up in alcoholic relationship. And they're going, how could this possibly happen? How could I have ended up? It's because alcoholism, just like everything else, has a vibrational frequency. And like, so if that was the frequency, that was the vibration, that was what the energy in which you were around for 18 years growing up, there's a certain aspect of that vibration, that vibrational rate, that just feels comfortable to you. You don't like the external expressions of it and all the horror that it caused, but the vibrational rate just feels normal for some reason. So now all of a sudden, you're out there meeting some people you might date, right? Or you're dating multiple people. You date one, then you date another person, you date another person. And these people you're dating, you're just kind of like, they're a nice person, but no, I'm not really interested in that one. Oh, this one, I don't know, man. There's just something about them. I just feel comfortable around them. I feel like I can be myself. It's like, oh, okay. So that there's probably an aspect of them that reminds you of your household growing up. And we don't know necessarily which aspect of the vibration that is. It could be like I was saying, it could be alcoholism, but it might not be. It might be something else. So, this is I'm not going to go into like a deep solution for that. I mean, that's not what this podcast is about. Being conscious helps, I'll tell you that. Getting yourself into a healthy place and then choosing, like really seeing people for who they are, because that will cause you, if you just feel connected to somebody and you don't know why, you'll start rationalizing their behaviors and not seeing red flags and stuff like this, because you feel this strong attraction. You feel so at home with them that you just want to be with them. So you just start passing over the red flags and stuff. So the more grounded you are, the more, healthy you are when you're dating, you're less likely to do that. You're less likely to push aside the red flags, So, but back to the topic. So it's feeling weird, looking at something and going like, okay, I know this is what I'm supposed to, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but I used to do it this way. And I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel right for some reason. It just doesn't seem right for some reason. I don't know. I've got doubts. Like, that is normal. And it's important to understand that as you're going through change. If you're working on yourself in any way, shape, or form, I think we can work on ourselves. I've done a lot of work on myself. And like solo, I've also worked with other teachers and coaches and stuff like that. And I've grown, but I would say the majority of my growth has been pretty much solo. It's also been very slow at times because of that. I mean, I had the benefit of waking up spiritually right at the beginning, and in many, many ways, very profound. So I was, I had some information that I had to acclimate to and learn to understand and stuff like that. And I dove into other spiritual teachers' teachings in depthly for years and years and years. So it's not that I didn't do any of that stuff. It's just, this is my path, my particular path, because I try to believe it or not, like I try to learn from other people's teachings more, because because logically you go, of course, getting information from external sources is good. It speeds up the process. So I try to do it, and sometimes it works, but very few times. For the most part, every time I try it, I hit a wall and it goes. And when I tune in, it's like, no, Glenn, like, you're not supposed to be learning like this. You're supposed to be learning by going within and having the information come to you. That's how you learn. That's who you are. That's how it's supposed to be done. Yes, you can take some information from external sources here or there, little sound bites, whatever like that, but you need to process them on your own. It's just how I function, right? So I think we can all, it's tough to do in this world, especially, but theoretically, I think we all could just become who we're supposed to become all on our own. If we sat around meditating and being still and diving into our feelings and doing everything that we needed to do a lot, we could probably get to where we're going without the help of other people. It just takes so much longer. The times where I was able to get help from people, it sped things up. That's kind of what I view as a spiritual advisor. I don't think that it's part of the reason why I don't think I save anybody. Like I don't think I'm really responsible for other people's growth. I think they're responsible for their growth, because I can say whatever I want, and if they don't implement it, they're not going to grow. So in that way, they're responsible. Plus, I think that even if they never met me, they somehow find another way to grow. Like, I'm not the end all be all. Nobody needs me. Like, if I wasn't here, they would find another way, or, maybe going within, or maybe finding another teacher. Like, so it's not, it's not this you got to follow what I say and what I do. And I'm responsible for changing people. I'm not. They are. But it speeds up the process dramatically. Like I could never have had my spiritual awakenings without somebody teaching me. Like there's times when you need help. Oh, again, I rephrase. You don't need it. You might be able to do it on your own, maybe, but it would, like me, I guess I'm a good example, like, I don't know. I don't, maybe I couldn't get sober on my own. Most of the growth I might have been able to do on my own, but it would have taken me 100 years, where a lot of it took 8. That's what helping people does. I think that's what life coaching, spiritual advising, working with people one-on-one, I think that's what it does. It just speeds up the process dramatically, and it gives you somebody else to trust too. So when you're feeling weird, when you're told that you need to, instead of thinking this way, you need to think that way. Instead of acting this way, you need to act that way. It's like you can put your faith in me a little bit, your trust in me a little bit, because what I'm saying is resonating. And then when you go to do it, you feel that little fear and it doesn't feel normal. Well, if you have some faith in me, then it's like, well, I don't think Glenn would steer me wrong. It can give you that courage to get over that hump a little bit, and just lean in and do it. So I guess this is kind of a little bit turned into a little bit of an overview of life coaching and how I see life coaching. But, the reason I think it kind of leaned in that direction is just because, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about change, and that's why people go to life coaches. But it's okay to feel awkward. And if you have somebody that you trust, they're going like, no, man, you got this. Yes, I understand that it feels weird, but go ahead and do it anyway. It's okay. It's supposed to feel weird. It's like, oh yeah, okay. Understanding the process is helpful in that way to me. That's why I'm doing this podcast, is so you guys understand. Like when my father passed recently, one of the things that I did, like right when he passed, right after he passed, probably within a half an hour, probably, or within an hour, I'd say. Like I went and Googled on my phone, even though I already know this, I Googled on my phone the stages of grief. And I just looked for the bullet points, I just looked for an image that had the stages of grief. And I just read through them, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So if I feel denial or anger, that's normal. It's like, oh yeah, I just reminded myself what to expect. So when it came up, it didn't knock me so much. And I was like, oh, why am I feeling like this? When you're off center, when you're not confident in where you are or what you're going through, and when the emotions are coming through you, it's helpful to be like, okay. It's okay. It's supposed to feel like this. It's like, oh, all right. It can just calm us down. So, so we can move through what we need to move through. So this is along those same lines. This is why I want to explain to you guys, when you're going through change, there is an aspect of uncomfortability and weirdness and, not being sure of what you're doing. That's all normal. If you've come to the conclusion of like whatever your journey is at that particular time, whether you're working on yourself and you've got this intuitive hit where you need to make this change in your life, then do it. Follow through. Don't let that uncomfortability or that fear of the unknown or that weirdness or that bizarro world dynamic to keep you stuck. It's you can go talk it out with it. I mean, this, I kind of talked earlier about why you don't need a life coach. Well, this is one of the reasons why it's beneficial to have one. like I said, so you talk it out and you understand it and you're like, oh, okay. So, all right. So I'm going to do it even though it feels weird. It feels weird just because it goes against my conditioned behaviors. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means I'm behaving differently. And that feels weird at first, and then you get used to it over time. And then it becomes your new normal. And it's like, oh, okay, this is my new norm, man. Like, no, this is just how I interact with life. It's second nature after a while. It's through that neuroplasticity, like you start processing information in a different way than you used to. Then the old neural pathways start breaking away because they're not being used anymore. And the new neural pathways start getting stronger and more cohesive. And it just becomes your new norm. So you're off doing, and, and then like somebody hasn't seen you for 20 years and they're like, wow, you used to be like this. Now you're like this. How the heck is that possible? Neuroplasticity. I did something that felt uncomfortable over and over and over until it became my new norm. Right. So that's really what I wanted to say. I want to explain that to you guys. Just because it feels abnormal, not only doesn't mean that it's abnormal. Usually, if you're going through change, that's what you're looking for. You want it to feel awkward. If it doesn't feel weird, then you're probably doing the same thing that you have always done. And if you do the same things you've always done, you will get the same things you've always gotten. So we have to do things differently to get different results. We have to think differently to get different results. And that's going to feel weird and awkward in the beginning. So just do it anyway, follow through with that action. All right. Hope that helps. Peace. Take care. Let me know if I can be of service, and I will talk with you guys later.